And so we realize that we're stuck in cyclic existence, and no matter how much we arrange our lives, we still can't make it like we would like it to be. There's still dissatisfaction and suffering. And so we put our energy in learning the Buddha's teachings, and so that we can free ourselves from its suffering hold. But we also bring to mind all others, whether we know them or not, no matter how they think or feel about us. But all beings just want to have happiness, don't want to suffer. Just like we want happiness, don't want to suffer. So understanding this, then we seek the full awakening of a Buddha, and so we can lead all sentient beings to Buddhahood as well. So with this long-term motivation, let's share our understanding of the Mahayana paths and grounds tonight by reviewing the quiz that Venerable Children wrote for us. So I thought to begin with just a little bit of brief review, just to kind of get us into the content, since the first questions are concerning bodhicitta, the wish to become a Buddha in order to help all sentient beings, to benefit them. I thought maybe to review the advantages of bodhicitta. When I read these again, it was quite inspiring, actually. And when Venerable taught on this, she said that these 10 types of advantages are really designed to really fit with the many different dispositions of beings. So I think within this list, there's going to be one that really is going to touch your heart, if not more. So the first one is, it's the only gateway for entering the Mahayana path. So if you really admire the Mahayana path, this really is the only doorway. The second one is that you receive the name Child of the Buddha. And when Venerable taught this, she said, just think of the names that you're usually called. And this is a better name, certainly. The third advantage is you surpass in brilliance the hearers and solitary realizers. And Chantakurtri says that you surpass them in brilliance and lineage when you attain bodhicitta. The fourth is you will become an object of the highest respect and offerings. The fifth is that your collections of merit and wisdom will be easily completed. And this is because your bodhicitta makes actions very, very powerful and effective. And the sixth, the obstacles of negative karma are very quickly eliminated, because you are working for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's a mind that is very powerful. The seventh is whatever you wish for in general will happen. When you have a virtuous wish, it is easier to fulfill because you have such a powerful mind due to generating bodhicitta. The eighth advantage is it prevents and overcomes harms and interference. And so when we have bodhicitta, our love and compassion is so strong that external enemies are quickly overcome. And she gave the example of the crazy elephant that was charging toward the Buddha, and as soon as it came close to his love and compassion, it quit charging and kneeled down. The ninth is you quickly complete all the realizations of the path. And this again is because of your bodhicitta. You are so intent on benefiting all sentient beings that you don't get distracted. You don't feel lazy at all. And also you can enter Tantra very quickly. And then the 10th advantage is with bodhicitta you become a source of comfort and happiness for all sentient beings. And with this one I thought about watching His Holiness in crowds, and when he is talking to people, how everyone around him is so happy, you know. So these are quite inspiring, I think. It's nice to review them periodically. And I also wanted to just touch briefly on equanimity, because this is the precursor for the two methods of generating bodhicitta. And so this is really quite important. And Venerable talked about how if we don't have equanimity, when we do meditation on the kindness of others or on love, what we end up with is a very impartial love, or thinking of the kindness of others. We don't include everybody. And so that's not going to work. That's not going to help generate bodhicitta at all. So we really have to focus on equanimity. And so that's kind of in terms of practicing the path. Then she just said also that in terms of just living a happy life, if we develop our equanimity and can see the kindness of all, then we just have a happier life. Right now we divide people into friend, enemies, and strangers. And you know, it's so habitual. We walk into any room and there's new people in there. We immediately, at least I do, put them into a category. It just arises. So it's quite a habitual pattern. And so then she talked briefly about how to overcome seeing some as dear and others not so dear. And so when we meditate on equanimity, we can use any of these three lines of reasoning to help us. We see how these categories of friend, enemy, and stranger, how they're very subjective. We see how they're created by our mind. And then third, we see that they're impermanent and can change, of course. The person that was the friend ended up being the enemy ended up being the friend. They both ended up being strangers later on. And then, it also very inspiring, she talked about how when we have a more equanimous mind, how this leads not to a feeling of apathy towards everyone, but to an equal, open-hearted caring and concern for everybody. And if we drop this friend, enemy, and stranger, what do we have left? We have an open space in which we can generate equal-hearted care and concern for everybody. When we have this open space, we can feel like we are related to everybody and not alienated. So it really opens space for real compassion and love. And it's attachment, of course, that prevents this real connection. And so when we release attachment and have more equanimity, then we can really develop a steady connection, which is going to be quite stable. So just a little review. So now let's go to the first question. So the first question are, what are the two methods to generate bodhicitta, and outline the basic steps of each? Can somebody at least say what the two methods are? It's so silent.
I'll do one method.
Okay.
The 7-point instructions that we see all beings as having been our mothers. Whether you believe it or not, we take that stance. And that we remember their great kindness to us throughout time. And then wish to repay that kindness arises. That's the third. So the fourth one is then we generate this loving kindness, this wish to repay, this warm-hearted love. And then great compassion arises from that for all beings. And the sixth one, I don't remember the exact phrase Venerable uses, but we take personal responsibility for ending the suffering of these beings that we've raised compassion for, and then the result is bodhicitta.
Yeah.
So those 6 are causes, and the 7th
Is the result. Yeah. The sixth one she calls the great resolve.
Great resolve.
Yeah.
That's right. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Sometimes I've read it as the superior thought.
Yeah.
I think that's what. Pardon?
Also known as the extraordinary.
Extraordinary intention. Yeah.
Yeah. That taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And that's part of the answer.
Mm-hmm.
One method.
Yeah.
The other one is equalizing self and others.
Mm-hmm.
It's first step is equalizing self and others. Second one is the disadvantages, meditating on the disadvantages of cherishing oneself. Third is meditating on the advantages of cherishing others. Then exchanging oneself with others. And finally, online.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to share?
Are you going to review this for like recording?
Pardon?
Are you going to restate for the recording?
Oh, you think they can't hear? Usually they can hear okay.
No,
Okay.
we're not connected to anything, but
Yeah. All the other weeks the questions were quite clear. Yeah, so I think it's okay. Yeah. So where was the exchanging self and other from? Who
Shantideva.
wrote that? Shantideva, yeah.
The lineage of Manjushri and Nagarjuna.
And how about the first one?
From the lineage of Trey and Sangha.
Sangha. So one of the things I read, I think this was from Geshe Sopa maybe. It was quite helpful to read this because I wasn't so clear on this actually. He said, exchanging self and others does not mean that you become someone else and that person becomes you. It also does not mean that you hand your happiness over to others and take their misery in exchange. That cannot be done. What we do is reverse our mindset. We replace our self-centered desire for thinking our own happiness with a wish for others to have happiness. The practice of exchanging self and others is to replace selfish egoism with sincere caring for others. This is possible because both selfishness and loving compassion are relative. They are dependent on thought. The basis for this practice is a correct perception of the dependent, relative nature of reality. I thought that was very helpful. How about what are the obstacles to the exchanging self and other, to that practice? What would be the obstacles? Why that's so hard for us to do?
Self-centered thought,
Yeah.
based on self-grasping egoism.
Yeah. Yeah, self-centered thought. Yeah. So he, again, I think Ashizopa said that ignorance, one is ignorance. And the other, what was the other? Oh, to training is in the practice of exchanging self and others, thinking that other person's misery does not affect me, so why should I do anything about it? It is somebody else's problem. Is that anything people here think about sometimes?
I think it feels that way sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what happens for me is, let's say I read a news story, and it's Africa, and, you know, someone's starving. There's a certain way I feel it, but a certain way I don't. Because if I really did, I don't know, it's somewhat overwhelming, the amount of suffering around the world. So I think I'll tell myself someone else has to take care of that.
Because I can't do anything
Yeah,
here
yeah,
about it.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. You had something?
Maybe that's why it's better not to start with torment too. So first with the 7 instructions, and then also to think about really to get the feeling of how would it be if everybody would be happy, to let the thoughts a little bit by side, the critical thoughts maybe. It's not possible that I can have more than to connect with this deeper meaning of this practice in a heartful way. Let it in.
Yeah, so really get the experience of feeling it in your heart, that you keep reminding yourself. Everything I read, they said so many times over and over again that you have to habituate yourself to this over and over and over and over and over again, because our ignorance is so deep and our self-centeredness is so strong that we really have to do it continually.
No, it's not. I was having this the other day. It's not just like thinking of the great suffering in the world. It's like being in the lunch line and going up to get a cookie and they're all gone. Well, did I immediately go, oh, I'm rejoicing that everyone had these wonderful homemade cookies? No. My happiness was the most important in the room. So, you know, it's even that level of what's up. No cookie for me? So, yeah, that's the obstacle right there.
So do most people agree that the 7-point cause and effect is probably easier one to start with, more accessible than exchanging self and others? No?
Not exactly. I guess I don't think necessarily, because I think that the reasoning that goes along with the exchanging self and others is actually a little easier sometimes to take in. You don't have to confront family issues, you don't have to confront rebirth and things like that. You can just actually go straight to the, it's kind of like a different mode. I actually like both of them, but I think for some people the whole thing with thinking about those family and rebirth is kind of doesn't work so well. But I think you can actually get around that pretty easily just by, like what Jeffrey Hopkins does in his book on this, is he just says use a friend and a kind person, and, I think actually you can go around it by understanding what you're really trying to, how to develop heartwarming love. Personally, I think it seems like you can kind of get there that way. But then you kind of miss the part of everybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would still be, you'd really have to have the equanimity part really, really strong.
Really
If you
strong,
could-
yep.
The one that they do there, which is the friend, enemy, and stranger, if you could really get that really strong, I think you could make some headway and kind of bypass the other mother, family, and rebirth.
What is why we are doing this kind of practice? How you are describing it first to take some friends or relatives you have a better connection with, that your mind is already changing, and then by time you will see probably your parents you have difficulties with in another relationship with your practice constantly.
I also heard a teacher say that was really helpful to me to a group once. Just take the stance or attitude that everyone's been kind to you. You don't have to say rebirth or my mom. Just take that everyone has and see what it does to your day and your mind. So he was just taking kind of a very practical approach. Just see, do you feel happier when you do this? Do things go better with people? And if it does, then you can have that stance. And you don't ever have to think about, do I believe in rebirth? And has everyone been my mother? It's a little bit like what you were saying, but kind of a little different take on it. So to include everyone. They've all been kind to me, I'll just assume that. And then go around the day and see. That was really helpful.
That's very good.
It just went away from all the confusion I had when I first heard this.
And I think that for me, the thing about remembering to actually do that when, like, you go into a room, and to bring that thought in is what then short circuits the habitual, oh, look at them, what are they doing? Or, the critical junk that keeps coming, that comes up just so automatically. And so that to me is the great effort, to actually prepare the mind to think that, and then, whether you believe it or not, but you just keep putting it in there, and then pretty soon it takes hold, and because it'll start overpowering, the negative critical stuff that we bring out all the time, at least I do.
I want to add to what I said is that my own practice, though, I find that taking my mother to be quite helpful, because one thing I realize that it does is, and then I can kind of try to think about other people in the same way, is that I haven't always agreed with my mom on things, but I have a deep love for her and a real appreciation of her kindness. So it's kind of like it helps me to get over that with other people too. I can go like, well, yeah, and I don't have to, we don't have to be the same. We don't have to have all this, agreement on everything, but I can still really appreciate what is, the kindness of another person. And so for my own practice, I use my mother a lot of times because, just because of that reason there, it's helped. That reason itself is that those thoughts are helpful. It makes it easy to transfer, because it's easy to say, well, wow, this person, they have that. I have that relationship too. Even if I don't have to believe that. But I can take it on. And then it helps my mind in relationship to that person. I don't really have to believe in rebirth, particularly to do this practice. But I can just say, wow, it's possible. Maybe, who cares? It's just like, just put my mind there. They're like this. And it works.
Minima-santa?
Recently on a 13-hour plane trip, I sat behind this mother and her child, and this child was maybe 8 months old, I'm not sure. And there was something a little bit wrong with this baby. And so for 13 hours, I observed what this mother did just to try and soothe this child that was constantly in motion just about. And I just saw her come and go in fatigue and kissing this child and doing everything possible to keep this baby happy. And then every now and then her mother, so the grandma would come and give her And so we all have difficult moments in our past where we think, oh, my mother, how could I reflect on that person?
Yeah.
But we don't know about those other moments
Yeah.
where there was nonstop 24/7
Yep.
care given to
Yep.
us to keep us alive and happy and
Yep.
healthy.
Yep.
It was quite extraordinary
Yep.
to watch and very touching.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think too, if we just reflect on what our view of our mother was and our connection and how we saw their kindness before we met the Dharma and did any of these meditations, and now, I mean, I don't know how many people here, but my idea about my mom changed greatly, and I have so much deeper appreciation of her kindness. And it is, like you said, Vinobatarpa, that thing about holding that the person was not perfect and they did the best they could with what they had, but there was kindness. There was kindness. And to experience that and to feel that and to open the heart to that. Because that's where we have to start, like you were saying, with somebody that we're connected with. And then we start, and I think it was in Jeffrey's book, that you start with the people that are easy to get that experience, that feeling in your heart. And then you start taking on the ones that your mind, maybe has more resistance to.
One of the things, connecting with what you said about before the Dharma and after the Dharma, thinking of kindness of parent, all of Venerable's teachings on this led me to realize I completely took for granted before Dharma my parents' clothing, feeding, sheltering, getting me to a doctor. I took it all for granted, and I did not call that kindness.
Yeah.
So it was like, that's not kindness.
Yeah.
And then Venerable continually pointing out, it is kindness. They had to self-sacrifice to do that. That's why they were working so hard. And some parents don't do that. And it was like, they chose to do that. They could have, put me somewhere else or given me away or said we can't do that or whatever. But they chose to do it for all of the children in the family. So that's a big turning for me, was seeing those things as kindness.
Yeah.
That they did not have to do.
Yeah.
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 And that really changed the perspective. Yeah.
And Venerable too made the point that even if our parent really quite unskillful and really didn't parent us at all, they either figured out somebody that could, or even if they didn't, even if it was quite neglectful, they still gave us life. And we have this precious human life with which is the basis to actually develop all of these realizations and all of these bodhicitta, etc. So even in the worst case scenario, we can still open our hearts to, you gave me life. You gave me life.
I could see critical, like a biological thing. So the mother is getting pregnant and she can't do anything against it, and maybe she is hurting the child in the stomach by drinking, smoking, whatever, and behaving bad. And then she's getting birth, so it's a biological process, and then she's leaving this child somewhere on the street or the bed case. So then I don't see this one as a preciousness of her, the kindness. I see it more as a biological thing going on, actually.
Yeah. But so it depends on which view you take it as. For the child that survived that, there was kindness. Without that person, they would not be here.
I would see it then the person who took the child from the street is a kindness.
Well, but if there wasn't a mother, there wouldn't be a child.
I wouldn't say it as kindness. I would say it's a biological thing. It's,
They could have ended the pregnancy.
Yeah.
They could have ended
Could have ended the pregnancy. Yeah.
this is a neutral action, yeah, then it's a very negative action. I don't know, it's, if it's kindness, you know.
I think that if you think about kindness, not in
Yeah.
terms of their motivation, when we think about the kindness of others, we don't include their motivation. We, like all the people who built these roads, we benefit.
Yeah.
We benefit because they built these roads. They didn't intend to help us necessarily. So that's the way we train our minds so that we can, because we're trying to open ourselves. And it does sustain our life to have all these things that people did not
Intentionally.
they had no motivation for
Yep.
us personally, but we benefit. And in that sense, that's the sense that we use kindness.
Yep.
So you can say that you've got a body.
Yep.
Very human body.
Yep. You got a human body. Yep.
And
Yep.
that's a big thing.
Yep.
And that, if you use the words in those ways, and that's the way that actually they're used when you think about the kindness of others. It doesn't have to do with their motivation. And we want to try to think that way. I mean, you don't, because you can see how it makes the heart more connected to these people. You can appreciate more the people who bring us the internet
Yeah.
and everything else.
Yeah. 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 And that's it. By working on these places that we get stuck with is the only way to actually open our hearts. Otherwise, it just keeps up here and not so helpful. Because it's the experience when we walk into a room and we go, oh, that comes from here. That's not this stuff, So to keep figuring out how to get that open heart feeling and to strengthen that's what we want to do.
Geshe-Tashi Sering, in his book on developing bodhicitta, has an interesting thing about it because they always say that the two methods, the 7-point cause and effect is more for those with dull faculties, and the exchanging self and others is those with sharper faculties, which always makes me go.
Yeah.
But what he says is, that sharper, duller thing sounds hierarchical. It's not what it means. He said his view of that is that people who have a more emotional orientation to life tend to respond more to the 7-point cause and result, and people who have a more intellectual approach tend to do better with starting with equalizing, exchanging self and others, and the goal of each one is the same.
Same, yeah.
And so, the main thing is to find the one or the combination,
Yep.
which we also learned,
Yep.
that works for developing that end. And that's really the point.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not think of it as a hierarchical system, but
It's the predispositions.
Ye-
or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever works for your mind. Yeah. 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 That's good.
I was thinking for this example of a mother who abandons her child in the way you described. My dad had a patient who did this once, and I talked to him about it, and so it feels kind of real to me. And having known some children who were taken away from their mothers, who I know quite well. And what I try to do in working with this is kind of go through the back door when I feel stuck, and like if I can't see their kindness. And I agree with you, they don't have the motivation necessarily that you might want. But if I go through the back door to me is compassion, because the people who are in these situations are quite unhappy. And so, I want to, so I can feel the compassion side for them, but I also have to find a way to have an appreciation for them. And I think when I look at what gets a person to that place, I can have more appreciation for them as a human being, because people don't do those things without a lot of past difficulties in their life. And so it opens my heart to them as a human being, and maybe I'm not able to go directly to their kindness, but I want to get to a place where I can feel a sense of concern and care for them, and You know, I think that's the way around for me often, is to go through compassion and work my way back.
Yeah, then it's more, okay, you're not watching directly this situation of the mother who's getting this child. You are seeing more the person and the background and a longer history. And then, of course, you can see the natural position of this person is to be a kind person. That when you're born and have normal circumstances, then normally you have a good heart and so on.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, just tapping in, and that person also has Buddha nature. How tragic that their life went this way.
And too, it seems like that when we can wrap our minds around it the way you're describing, Venerable Tarpa, that then that can start fueling this thought of, you know, I have to do something to help. And what can I do now? Not so much. Let me become enlightened, because then I could help.
And also the equalizing part, in the sense of, well, I don't feel so different from people. This is one reason why I feel so comfortable going into the prisons. I really do not feel so different from the people I'm meeting there. Just a turn of a few events, my life could have been very many different ways. And so that's helpful.
You know, one young parent at our last shared Dharma day in our small group said something that has really stuck with me, that young parents often have to make very difficult choices. And it just was like, oh yeah, and it really helped me start forgiving my young parent, who I was. And I've kind of been very judgmental of her. And this woman who's kind of where I was, you know, like 40 years ago or 30 years ago, she was just like right there, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was what I was like, you know, and what I was facing. And it was like, oh, my heart just really opened, and it was like, oh, just understanding. Like, why would a mother do that, you know, leave a baby, you know, or abuse a baby, or any of that is pressures that we don't even understand.
Such pain and confusion. So let me just, does anybody have anything else on this question? Let me just finish with what Shantideva says in the Compendium of Trainings. By becoming accustomed to the equality of self and others, bodhicitta will become firm. Self and others are dependently established. They are false, like this shore and the other shore. That shore is not in itself the other shore. In relation to someone else, it is this shore. The self is not established in and of itself. In relation to someone else, it is other. So I think that helps us remember that we have the ability to really treat all things as equal if we put our logic and our wisdom to it. So question 2. What is the definition of a bodhicitta?
It seems that the first question and the second question, I answered them both. It's a primary mind with two aspirations, which are to be of benefit to all beings. First aspiration, to become awakened in order to be able to do that. So I'm not, the only definition I have is that it's a primary mind, because then the two aspirations in the second question.
Okay. Primary mind.
Well, that's what Venerable had in her note. She says that bodhicitta is a primary mind with the aspiration to attain awakening.
Okay.
But I don't know what else would be another definition of it, because the second question answers what I say is the definition of bodhicitta.
Okay. So you're also talking about the second part, which is what are its two aspirations then? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add? I kind of like the way Geshe Sopa wrote about this. He said, complete bodhicitta has two aspects. You have to attain Buddhahood yourself, because if you are not perfect, you cannot lead others to perfection. Therefore, the immediate goal of bodhicitta is your own goal of perfect enlightenment. The main goal is to help other sentient beings perfectly by leading them to enlightenment. So complete bodhicitta is wanting to attain perfect Buddhahood, not only to help other sentient beings, but also to accomplish your own goal. I like the way he kind of put that together. Yeah.
And also the wish to attain Buddhahood should be, you want to have it fast.
Fast?
Yeah, to attain Buddhahood fast so you can help others as
Uh-huh.
fast as possible.
Uh-huh.
Because they're suffering right now,
Uh-huh.
so you can't help. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. So the reason that we have this energy behind it is because we see the suffering. Yeah, yeah. I just wrote down too Maitreya's definition of bodhicitta in the ornament for clear knowledge is bodhicitta is for others' welfare the desire to attain complete enlightenment. So that's just another way to say it. Okay, so how about the third question? What is its focal object?
An awakening.
Buddhahood is the direct object. Yep. And then the last one is great compassion a cause of bodhicitta, a mental factor occurring together with bodhicitta, both or neither?
I think it's both.
You think it's both? How about you, Vinvatarpa?
It's both.
You don't think it both? Yeah. How
I
come?
think it's a, would be the right word. It's a cause,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not occurring together with, it's not, well, in the
Doesn't
sense of it's not the
accompany.
object.
Pardon?
Sentient beings aren't the object.
It just says a mental factor.
Yeah, mental factor. Yeah, it's right.
And it doesn't disappear when bodhicitta comes. It's like a part of it.
It's an unmanifest mental factor.
It says it doesn't accompany bodhicitta.
Yeah.
It's the cause of it.
It does not.
It's not.
No, so it's kind of over.
That's a cause.
It's a
like
cause.
the seed in the sprout.
Mm-hmm.
The seed's gone, the sprout's there. Okay, how about that?
Mm-hmm. Other comments on this one?
Could we restate what we decided?
Pardon?
Could we restate what we decided?
Yeah, yeah. Madam Semke, you want to restate what you said?
That it is a cause for bodhicitta. It is not a mental factor accompanying it with it. Together, it's not together with bodhicitta. I'm not sure about what happens after bodhicitta is generated, because compassion is still a mental factor in the mind of a bodhisattva.
Yeah, that's why I say both.
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing.
Mm.
So it is the cause, but
Unless
it
it's like a
continues
seed
to...
and sprout, you know,
I think
the cause and the result.
The one of the confusions I have is this thing about the object, like when she asked the focal object, because the focal object for compassion is sentient beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where there's like,
Yeah, but she taught him that really clearly, that technically speaking, there could only be one object.
Object,
So it
right,
has
I think
to be
the same.
Buddhahood.
It has to be
Right.
Buddhahood. Yeah,
It is full awakening.
yeah. Geshe Sopa also
Right.
wrote that too. I read that.
But we're on this next question.
Yeah.
yeah, so what
Yeah.
would you say, either, both?
But you can't definitely skip when you do the 7 steps, right? So you have to go through faith, compassion, and then once after respect thought, then you attain bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm.
So then bodhicitta is the wish, the constantly wish to attain Buddha for the benefit of all.
Yes.
So it's integrated, right?
Integrated?
I mean, they're both there. They're both mental factors are there.
Mm.
Then it's
Then
both.
you, normally I heard that you only can have one mental factor when you're acting, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, because you have omnipresent mental factors.
Oh, yeah.
Some say 7.
Yeah.
I think it's because of the thing of it being a primary mind where it gets hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Remember what happened that night when we talked about this?
Mm-hmm.
Remember what she came down to? It came down to Buddhists have bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, this was the question that was kind of, that's right. Yeah.
A little stuck still.
Yeah.
I
But
have
it
my
was about
answer.
bodhicitta, it was about compassion, which of course Buddhists have too.
Yeah, it was about compassion. Yeah. Let me just read what Geshe Sopa said.
Oh, good.
The first 4 elements of the sevenfold method are causes of compassion. Recognizing all sentient beings as our mothers, remembering their kindness, wanting to repay their kindness, and affectionate love. Great compassion arises from affectionate love. As a consequence of great compassion, the great resolve arises. In turn, the great resolve is the direct cause of bodhicitta. Why doesn't compassion result directly in bodhicitta? Isn't great compassion enough? Actually, the great resolve is great compassion. It is compassion so strong that it deserves another name. By training the mind in the first 4 causes, the desire of great love and great compassion arise. Such immeasurable love and compassion are common to those that practice the fundamental vehicle. Arhats also want all sentient beings to be free of misery and to have happiness. But Mahayana great love and compassion involves taking on the personal responsibility to give all others the highest happiness and eliminating their misery. It is not just wishing, it is taking up the burden to make it happen oneself. This kind of great compassion is the great resolve. It is deciding, I must remove all sentient beings from samsaric misery. I must provide them with happiness. And then he writes about a sutra called, in the Questions of Sagamati Sutra, the Buddha gives an example to help us understand the difference between compassion and great compassion. When a merchant's householder's wife gave birth to a much desired only son, the parents cherished the baby. They saw only his good qualities. Because young children run around heedlessly of danger, this little boy fell into a deep sewer. When the mother and other relatives saw that the toddler had fallen into the hole in the ground, they screamed, mourned, and cried for help. But they remained above ground. This did not mean they did not love their child. They did. But they did not have the courage to go down into the deep pit. When the child's father arrived and saw that his son had fallen into the sewer, without any disgust for the filth or fear of the deep, he took upon himself the responsibility to rescue the child and jump down to save him. So this is an analogy for great compassion. The deep, dirty sewer is a symbol for the 3 realms of samsara, the desire, form, and formless worlds. The only child represents all sentient beings who have fallen into samsara. The mother and other relatives represent those who have not developed great compassion. And the father represents a bodhisattva. I thought that was a really good story to highlight the depth of great compassion.
So we don't know if these mental factors occur together simultaneously yet.
I don't.
The answer was that it
It didn't. We think
The answer that it
we
doesn't.
think it doesn't.
But we don't,
Yeah.
what's the explanation? It's the cause. but not the result. I think the explanation must go with cause and result. When the result comes, the cause is done, neat. Like when the sprout comes, you can't find the seed anymore.
Mm.
They have different objects, so they can't be present at the same time, because the objects are different. If they were present at the same time, your mind would have two objects at the same time.
Okay, different.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
objects. Okay, that's helpful.
Mhm.
What's up?
The object of compassion is sentient beings, and the object of bodhicitta is
So, it's Buddhahood.
That was it. Now I
Mhm.
remember what you said. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Ken.
And the reason a Buddha has bodhicitta is the object is the object is the enlightenment of all beings.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it's still the same object, but it's for sentient beings.
Mm.
Okay.
So we decided the answer was neither?
No.
It's a cause. It's a
It's
cause.
not,
I thought it was the cause of the altruistic intention, which is the cause of bodhicitta.
Bodhicitta and the altruistic intention are synonymous.
Okay, excuse me, then it's the cause of
Great resolve.
Great
great
resolve.
resolve, which is the cause of
but
bodhicitta.
those 6 are all causes of Buddha.
Mhm.
So it's one of the causes.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
So it's one of the causes. Mhm.
So is it a cause? A cause.
Doesn't say the cause.
Doesn't say the cause.
Yeah, they say a cause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a cause. The first 6
cause.
are causes.
Mhm.
It is a cause.
Mhm.
Okay.
Other comments?
There was something on equalizing and exchanging that I wrote down from reviewing notes, which is, and I don't think I heard it explicitly, but implicitly, that we're all the same. Is that in equanimity? We're all the same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. Is that part of the equanimity, or equalizing and exchanging are both?
Part of the equalizing.
Equalizing,
Yeah, I
yeah.
just didn't hear that said
Mhm.
explicitly. One of the thoughts to generate that.
Mhm.
This holiness really states that one over.
Over and over again, yeah.
All the same in wanting happiness and in giving suffering.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think the other thing that Venerable also highlighted is that when we're doing this 7-point cause and effect, that you have to go in sequence. You can't kind of jump around. So, and then of course the question comes, you know, do we even work with that if our equanimity is so weak? What do you think about that?
I heard that we have to have a stable equanimity.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I have our equanimity, our sense of equanimity has to be stable. So first we have to establish this.
Establish
and then
that.
to
Yeah.
start with the 7 points.
Yeah, because if you, well, I guess like what she said, if you start with it before that, then you don't get the correct result. You have impartiality.
But
Yeah.
that's not to say that you don't start to reflect on those points until you have stable equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
The familiarity of the whole process is important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we'd never get there.
Yeah, we'd never get there, would we?
Because that's a pretty tall order.
That's
to
a
have.
very tall
order.
Equanimity,
Mm-hmm.
circle around is like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what, the one thing in, on the Yeshe talks about, is just how big that equanimity is when it's
Yes.
fully developed.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Maybe ours is partial.
yeah.
but it's-
So how do we evaluate our progress with equanimity? What would be the measurement, the signs? Yeah.
That's a good question.
That we're not so hooked into the labels of friend, enemy, stranger.
Okay. Yeah.
We hold everyone with equal regard.
I know it's helpful for me to look over my life and see who has been friend, enemy, and stranger, and who has churned from friend to stranger, enemy to stranger, enemy to friend, just to see them switching in my life. Sometimes within the course of the day, someone here at the Abbey will go through it.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
just to see that's all
Yeah.
coming from, in here, it's coming from my own mind.
Yeah,
And that is just how they relate to me. So really fess up to
yeah,
where those labels come in the
Yeah.
first place and how they're arbitrary and have no basis.
basis at all, yeah.
When you give equal importance to others' happiness and suffering to your own, you're no longer you no longer prefer your own happiness over someone else's, and worry more about your own suffering over someone else's. I think that is,
I think that's more bodhicitta and less equanimity.
I think it's part of the equalizing step of that, equalizing self and others. So maybe it's not directly equanimity.
Let me just read this last thing that Geshe Sopa talked about. I mean, a lot of what this all comes down to is our ignorance. And so he was talking about the second obstacle to training in the practice of exchanging self and others, and thinking that other person's misery does not affect me, so why should I do anything about it? Someone else's problems. Their problems are nothing to us because we believe we are completely independent and unconnected to them. And this would be like thinking, since a completely different person will exist in the future, why should I worry about saving money now for retirement? And then he goes on, there is no ultimately real whole body. The body is an aggregation of many parts, torso, feet, hands, and so forth. The mind adds a label to all these parts and we grasp it to be an independent, absolutely real whole. But that whole entity depends upon the mind perceiving the parts. Reason shows us that the whole is not independent of its parts. The whole and the continuum exist dependently, not absolutely. How do we exist? And this is the sentence I like. We can softly establish the self as imputed on a collection of parts. There is no absolutely real so-called self or other deep down beneath this imputation. The mind imposes the continuity as a self-sufficient whole upon a combination of causes, conditions, parts, and moments. It appears that something is absolutely there, but it is a mistake to hold on to this appearance. I like that sentence where he says, we can softly establish the self as imputed on a collection of parts. That kind of gives a real feel for how to work with the mind, I think, with that. So, we've used our time.
Thank you, Anne.
You're very welcome.